philanthropy. This week, I'm thrilled to introduce someone I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with for about 5 years. Over this time, I've come to trust implicitly in his friendship, expertise, and most notably, his principles and values. He always makes himself available and is more than helpful whenever needed. He is a self taught SEO expert who honed his skills out of necessity for his own company. Known as a systems guy, he excels in creating and optimizing processes and is an author recognized for titles such as Free Traffic Frenzy, How to Get 450,000 plus website visitors, and 1 Second Math, Homework Help on Demand. He has worked as a consultant for JP Morgan, and he's a renowned expert for many things, to say the least, but most notably, he is the math celebrity. He founded MathCelebrity, the fastest math tutor on the planet, which has helped millions of students worldwide and was recognized in 2016 as a top 100 homeschool website. His ability to simplify complex concepts and dedication to helping others is truly inspirational. Join me in welcoming my friend, Don Sevcik.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure. So, I know today you're going to cover a lot of ground on mental models and what they are and dive into three very specific models. But before we get to that, share a little bit more about who you are and about MathCelebrity, what it is, what inspired you to create it, and who benefits from it.
Yeah, I started Math Celebrity in 2007, and it's an automated online math tutor. An easier way to describe it is like a Google for math. So you put your math problem in, push the button, and in a split second, about the time it takes for you to blink your eye, it will show you the step-by-step math as well as the answer. I came up with the idea for that. I used to work a corporate job, and I got tired of having really good reviews from my managers and peers, and then you would come into the room with your boss and he'd say, "Congratulations, you had a great year, and here's your 2% raise and 2% bonus." So I decided to branch out and find a way to make a little extra cash. And so I chose math tutoring because that's my major in college. Anyway, one student turned into two, two turned into four, four turned into six. And being that I was married and had a day job, I couldn't scale it. So I was racking my brain, asking myself, how do I scale helping people in math? Well, anyway, I'm back at my boring corporate job, and I was on a project where we had to do pension planning calculations with this team in India. And my boss sent them this 300-page diatribe, just this long guide, very dry. And long story short, the team in India wasn't getting it. It just wasn't clicking. So I had an idea. I said, what if we just build all the formulas on Excel, but in the cell next to the value in Excel, we make dynamic math. So when you change the cell value next to the answer, the math will dynamically update. And I did that, sent it to the team in India, and they were blown away. They said, now we get it. Now this is crystal clear. It makes sense. And when I saw their reaction, the first light bulb that went off in my head is, well, wait,
Yeah,
why can't I do this for my math students? And here we are 16 years later.
that is awesome. And you talked about it started with one and went to two to four to six and so on. So who does it truly benefit? Because this seems like the cheat code to me that, how do so many people say, "Hey, I'm not good at math." And now you don't have to be, right?
Yeah, it's funny. We've got users from ages 10 all the way through parents. So we found that the wheelhouse is usually junior high to high school, but a chunk of that audience is college students. So they're taking statistics finals, linear algebra. But then the shock to us, and we didn't discover this till we went to a couple in-person conferences, was sometimes mom will go sneak off in another room, run the problem, remember the math instead of having to go back through the textbook and say, "Oh yeah, I remember this," and then go back to the kitchen table and teach their kids. So it's nice because they get to be the star and we get to be kind of that force in the background that helps mom. So it's always a good feeling.
That's awesome. And the kids are blown away. It's like, how did mom know that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
mom doesn't, I
awesome.
mean, mom's very busy, right? She's got, especially nowadays, she's got extracurricular activities. She's got to
Yeah.
pack lunches, take the kids to school. So if we can save a student and especially mom 45 minutes to an hour on average on homework, I mean, that's huge for mom.
Well, that's huge for the kids too. You know, they don't want to sit there and go through all this stuff. They want to get it done and get out and do the next thing on their agenda too. So it's awesome. So this plays directly into the topic of your talk today of the mental models. You know, you identified a problem, created a solution, passed it off, and they recognized the solution. And it was an aha moment for you as well after you saw their recognition of that solution to just blow it up and expand it into something that is affecting millions today. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it feels really good.
So tell me or tell our audience exactly what mental models are. And I know you're going to cover three specific ones and you can touch on that too. But what are mental models? What does that even mean?
The easiest definition is it's a way to think about thinking. So if you were to take all your personal beliefs and the way you solve problems and you hang it on a wall, there'll be a system that you follow. For instance, when you meet somebody new for the first time, what is the process you go through? How's your eye contact? How's your body language? What's the first thought that comes in your head? And then let's take that a little bit deeper. Let's say you meet somebody that you're not so sure about. Do you make that obvious on your face? Or do you take it a little bit slower and get to know that person? So we all have these pre-existing beliefs, and if we're flexible, we can change those over time. But it's a way to think about thinking, how we approach problem solving, and really how we navigate life.
That is interesting. How you think about thinking. That's a light bulb moment for me. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you're ready to get started in the presentation, we can turn you loose and go from there.
Yeah, let's do it. Let me share my screen. All right. So today's presentation, as Michael mentioned, is about mental models. And I'm going to gear this towards business owners and entrepreneurs because that is the majority of who's listening. And I am also a business owner. So this is right in my wheelhouse. And I want to be able to help you enhance your decision making with these tools. So how did I come about mental models and why are we talking about this today? I was reading an interview the other day about billionaires in Silicon Valley and some of the big tech companies and big companies you see every day. And everybody was talking about, well, were they born? Were they born smart? Did they get lucky? Did they inherit money? All those things. And there was one wise person who's been around in Silicon Valley. And this person didn't start with a lot of money, but they're very intuitive for picking up things. And one thing they noticed was most of these billionaires are not necessarily smarter than you. Rather, they just think differently, right? They have a different approach to solving problems. And what they found was these billionaires like Elon Musk, Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, and others that you've seen in the news, they use these things called mental models. Now, if you think of the brain as a toolbox, you are only as good as the tools in your toolbox. And mental models give you a way to upgrade these tools. And as you dive deeper into these things, you might have the epiphany that, well, some of this stuff is so simple, but the key here is think about when at your house, if you use a water filter, right? You take the tap water, which isn't necessarily healthy or clean, you pour it in the filter, it goes through the charcoal and all the sediment, and it comes out pretty much perfect or refined. That's how I like to look at mental models is my old decision making could be upgraded. I want a better water filter, right? So I'm going to put my beliefs and my systems through this water filter, and out the bottom is going to come these mental models, which help me think better and move faster. Now, we're going to cover three types of mental models today. There's going to be economics, numeracy, and we're also going to cover systems. But I want to start with economics because this is something that affects us all. Now, the three mental models I want to cover today in economics are something called seizing the middle, opportunity cost, and arbitrage. Now let's talk about seizing the middle. On the screen, I've got Jeff Bezos. He is a prime example of somebody who took the seizing the middle mental model and just exploited it over and over and over again. Now, if we go back in time to Rockefeller and the oil distribution and railroads, Rockefeller became huge. Why? Because he controlled the transportation of oil. He was able to dominate the industry. And as he bought up more existing supporting businesses such as the railroads and supply chain, he was able to gobble up more of the market. And if you look at Jeff Bezos, for example, he just became the middleman for transactions of just about everything on the internet. So he started with books. And by the way, that's a great book to read is the story about how Amazon got started, because they talk about seizing the middle. For Jeff first started with books, and then he moved on to other goods, and then he optimized shipping, and pretty much this all just flowed into the company you know as Amazon today. Now, a great story I can share about this personally is years ago, I am at an accounting conference, which is, as you can imagine, one of the most boring things you can be at. And I went with my wife because she was working in an accounting firm at the time. And so she says, "Hey, tonight there's going to be a party at this penthouse condo in Reno, Nevada." Now, Reno, Nevada doesn't have much to do, but I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And so we show up to this accounting conference and we take an elevator up to the penthouse. And this company called Tritech, who supplies accounting firms with software, was hosting this thing. Now the elevator opens and we get out, and there's probably 50 people at this conference, and they're all having a great time. The drinks are flowing, they have some of the best appetizers and food imaginable, and everybody's getting along, right? There's no bad vibes in this room. And it blew me away because when you think of accounting, you think of, ledgers, balance sheets, people with, little bow ties calculating, clicking their numbers. But no, this was nothing like that. And so as I'm sitting back, because I love to observe and pick up little tips here and there, I realized the person that threw the party from Tritech was walking around the room, making friends, asking if everybody's, doing well. But that really wasn't the hit of the conference for me. What blew me away is this company hosts this conference every year, and sometimes it's in Reno, sometimes it's in California. So I eventually got to talking to the host, and I said, "Wow, you've actually made accounting fun. How did you do it?" And so she proceeded to tell me is we first started to go to different accounting companies and sell our software, and it just didn't work. And then she said, "How can I get in the middle of all this and be almost a point person?" And she said, "I remembered my uncle used to be really good in business, and his breakthrough was he would host parties or get-togethers or events. And instead of trying to sell the companies up front, he would just invite them to an event. And this event would be very memorable. Just as I said, the lobster tail and steak and Kobe beef and wine, the top of the line stuff, held in a condo or a really nice penthouse. And the owner of Tritech said, I have to invest, a small fortune in this, but what I get back is priceless. So not only does she get leads, she gets everybody talking about her party. And pretty soon, when they're talking about accounting software, the first thing they mention is, "Oh, I was at this party in Reno, Nevada, or San Diego, California, and we were on this penthouse, and the food was great. And oh, by the way, they also sell tech software." So this is a great example of seizing the middle. Is the Tritech owner didn't go after the business directly. She held the party and brought everybody to her. In fact, a great quote I heard about this is, in the old agrarian societies, we made the huge leap in farming when we went from asking, how do we get the water, to how do we get the water to come to us? And so that's what the Tritech CEO did, is by holding the party and optimizing it the first few years, pretty soon she had the middle, because when everybody thought about accounting conferences, the first thing they mentioned is, I want to go to the Tritech conference. So that is seizing the middle. Next, I want to talk about opportunity cost. I'm sure you've all heard about this, but essentially it's every choice you make has two parts: what you choose, but also what you're giving up. Now, stated in another way, it's when I say yes to A, I'm saying no to B, C, D, E, all the way through Z. So think of a choice as a rejection of something else. And let's talk about a few examples to help you as a business owner or just to be a better person. If I have, and this is me back in the day when I used to drink, if I have alcohol at night, I make a choice of I'm going to relax. I'm going to have a good time with friends. But the second I go to sleep, I'm going to lose sleep. For whatever reason, alcohol disrupted my sleep patterns. And what is the opportunity cost or the penalty I pay for that? Well, the next morning, I don't wake up at 7 a.m. I wake up at 9 or 10. I have a dry mouth. I have a headache. I'm dragging on my feet. And I'm just less entertaining and interesting to people around me because my head's slumped over. I'm dehydrated. I'm just not a fun person to be around. So by making that choice of alcohol late at night the night before, I give up health, happiness, and stability the next morning. How about another example? And I've seen this many times, including my family. Excessive spending, aka keeping up with the Joneses. I can go out right now if I wanted and buy an expensive car. But had I done that, I will give up one, two, $300,000 of investments or compound interest, which we'll talk about upcoming in the presentation. Is by spending that money now on say depreciable assets or liabilities, I give up the interest and the benefit and the equity that I could have taken that money and bought an asset. And so again, when you say yes to A, you say no to B. And this is a very good mental model for you when you're making decisions and choices in your business is if I make this choice, the more important question is what do I give up? Third, I want to talk about arbitrage. So arbitrage comes from, I believe it's an old French term, arbiter, which means you're making a choice of decisions. So the most popular arbitrage we probably see every day is stocks or cryptocurrency or investments. Now I'm sure you've all seen these high frequency trading programs where they can buy and sell in a millisecond. Part of what they exploit and why they make millions and billions of dollars is they go find exchanges, say in America, where they can buy a stock at $100, and in one third of 1 second or faster, they can go sell that stock on maybe a Thailand exchange for $100 and 2 cents, or $100 and 1 cent, or even a fraction of a cent. Now that doesn't sound like much, but if you multiply that by a million shares, that money starts to add up very quickly. And so price arbitrage is a great example for you. If you work with consultants, if you work with contractors, if you work with employees, is there a way for you to get the same service for cheaper or get more out of an existing service? So you got to think about if I go to India versus a US employee where I lose quality, or for the quality that I lose, is the price that I make up on the back end worth the exchange? So basically, price arbitrage is buying low in one market and selling high in another. Time arbitrage, on the other hand, is making use of time differences between markets or tasks. For instance, suppose we're building a new software that we're going to take to market. And if we just launch the software as is, there's going to be 20 minutes of manual time for the companies that you're selling to. So you could put it to market now, or you could take another 2 months and eliminate that 20 minutes where you can onboard a new B2B client in 2 seconds. Is it worth the time to be out of the market for 2 months and get that time benefit back by building the automation? Now, this is a question to ask yourself as you make decisions and make moves in the market and with your businesses. Can I use price arbitrage or time arbitrage to get any sort of advantage? Now, the second classification of mental models that I want to present today has to do with numeracy or numbers, which we all deal with. And the three mental models I want to cover under numeracy are compounding, multiplying by zero, and surface area. Now, in life, three things compound to your benefit if you play your cards correctly. The first is knowledge. As we read books and deal with smart people and and learn more things, our knowledge starts to compound. This mental models training is a perfect example. If you can even use one of the 9 mental models I present today, how much better will your business be if you get a small time or financial advantage? Second thing is networks. As we meet more people, as we drop people from our life that maybe just don't fit in anymore, if we're consistently improving our network, even by a small fraction, where will we be in 2 years, 5 years, or even 10 years? And finally, one of the big reasons we're all here is wealth. If we put a penny in the bank and don't touch it, it may not do much in a year or two, but after 10, 20, 50, or 100 years, what's that penny going to be worth? Now, this is one of my favorite examples of the power of compounding. Suppose we pick a skill you want to learn or get better at. Just picture this in your mind. You don't have to post in the chat, but just think of something you want to get better at. If we pick our skill and we decide, you know what, every day I want to get just a little bit better, just 1%, not a huge leap, but enough where we can make a dent. If we got better 1% for 30 days, most people think we'll only be 30% better. That is incorrect. The 1% compounds every day. We will be 34.8% better. So we get a little jump. Now let's extend it out to 90 days with our new skill. If we get 1% better for 90 days, we are now 144.8% better than we were on day 0. But here's where the magic happens. Suppose we stick with that skill and we get 1% better every day for a full year. At the end of 365 days, we will be 3,678% better at whatever skill we chose. And all we're talking about here, folks, is 1 measly percent every day. It's not a lot, but it starts to snowball every day we work on it. And the last compounding example, which is my favorite, is Warren Buffett. I just checked before this presentation started, before Michael introduced me, and it said Warren Buffett's current net worth is $135 billion, which is astronomical. But what would you say if I told you 99% of the 135 billion was made after age 65? Isn't that mind-blowing? So Buffett only had about 1 or 2 billion maybe at age 65. Now I believe he's in his 90s. He's got 135 billion. What changed? What changed between age 65 and now? Well, Warren reads, I believe, 400 or 500 pages of a book, articles, newspapers, and newsletters every day. In fact, his old partner, who recently passed, Charlie Munger, said, Warren basically sits on his butt all day and reads. That's his job. But what happens with that? Well, he compounds knowledge faster than most of the people on Earth. He's able to see moves in the market faster than all of us. He's able to look down the field 2, 3, 4 years and see the value of a business versus what it is now. But also think about if he just sits and does nothing. The last report that came out says Buffett's Coca-Cola dividends every year, if he sits down and does nothing, is over $1 billion. No work. If he just stops today, Coca-Cola is going to pay him $1 billion every year. But what happens if Buffett doesn't take that cash and he does what's called a DRIP, which is dividend reinvestment program, which is exactly what he does, by the way. The $1 billion gets reinvested and buys more Coke stock, which then pays you out more money, which invests in more Coke stock, and rinse and repeat. So as you can see, compounding starts off slow. Think about the snowball at the top of the mountain, right? You roll one about the size of your fist, but as it goes down that grade, that slope of the mountain, it starts to pick up and becomes a huge ball of snow. And that's exactly what we're seeing here with Buffett. And this is what you can use with your business. Can you compound your knowledge, networks, and wealth just a little bit every day? Next on Numeracy, I want to talk about something called multiply by 0. And on the screen, you see a family here in a tent, and it reminded me of a hilarious story that illustrates this mental model. 2 campers are sitting in a park late at night. The first camper says, I'm worried about bear attacks. Second camper says, I'm not worried at all. And the first camper says, well, why aren't you worried? It's a huge bear. And the second camper says, if a bear attacks, I don't have to be the fastest runner. I only have to be faster than a slower runner. And the first camper says, well, wait, I'm the slowest runner. Now, this perfectly illustrates this mental model I want to introduce to you. Is while the first camper may be smart and aware, he lacked one skill which nullified all those other skills. He was slow. So if the bear runs, how smart and how aware you are isn't going to matter. You can't outrun the bear. And for multiplying by zero, I use this example, and this will apply to your business. Take a look at this math problem on the screen. We're going to take 9,876,399 times 54,561 times 324,887 times 0. Without a calculator, can you solve that problem? Yes, I bet you did it in about a second or two. You see that last number there, 0, nullifies all those huge numbers before it. And when you understand this mental model, that all your efforts in business, networking, knowledge accumulation, wealth accumulation can be nullified by a single point, then you'll start to think about things differently. Now, how does this work for our business? Well, think about the people we deal with every day. Is there one employee in your business that could completely ruin it with a bad attitude or a bad frame of mind? Is there one client you're working with that is just dragging you down and sucking all your revenue out of your business? How about networking? Think about all the people you like in life. Usually this follows an 80-20, where 20% of the people give you 80% of the joy. Well, there's a flip side to that. 20% of the people suck out 80% of the joy. And so if you think about, if is there one or two people in your life that are just kind of dragging you down, that take all the joy away, they are what's called a multiply by zero. Now, how do you use this mental model? Well, every day or at least once a week, just list out inventory of things you're working on in your business, people you're dealing with in life, stock investments you have, or opportunities you have, and then start figuring out what is the one thing on each of these lists that is just dragging me down, or if it goes wrong, it's just going to completely ruin me. And then you'll start to get a fresh insight on what you should do next. Is can I eliminate the multiply by zero problem, or can I reduce it such that if it goes wrong, it doesn't have as big an impact on my business or my life? And finally, under numeracy, we're going to talk about surface area. So we've all taken math class. Surface area is just if you add up all the space on an object. So for instance, an ice cube has 6 sides. They're all squares. You just add up the area of one square multiplied by 6. But surface area has a deeper meaning for us in business and life. So if you think about surface area, there's times where it benefits you to have a bigger surface area. And here's an example. I am on a business trip in Dallas, Texas, about 20 years ago. And I go out with my coworker after work ends, and we're at this rodeo bar, and the bartender comes up and he says, "Hey, gentlemen, what can I get you to drink?" So I order my drink, and my colleague orders a scotch on the rocks, but he tells the bartender specifically, "Can I get crushed ice or mini ice cubes?" And the bartender kind of looks at him funny and says, "Yeah, I think we got a crushed ice maker in the back. I'll handle it for you." So we're sitting there BSing, and the bartender comes back out and presents him with the drink, and it's got the crushed little tiny crushed ice cubes in there and the scotch. And so curiosity got the better of me, and I asked my colleague, "Why did you order the crushed ice?" And he told me, "Well, are you aware how a drink cools down?" And he said the ice makes contact with whatever it's trying to cool down, but bigger ice cubes, there's less surface area exposed. And I said, "Well, explain that." And he said, "Well, look at this big ice cube in your drink." He said, "Most of that ice is under the surface. It's not touching the drink. But if I crush the ice up or cut the ice, there's more surface area, more contact from the ice touching the drink. Therefore, it cools it faster, number one, and keeps it cool longer." And I was fascinated, and it just blew me away because that has applications for our business and life. So if you think about lungs have a large surface area. Why? Because it gives more area to take in oxygen for your body. If you think about there's the flip side to that is surface area. So on the screen here, I've got two people fighting. When you're in combat, or even if somebody gets, say, in a gunfight, I was told by a martial arts expert, you want to turn your body sideways so you give the attacker less surface area for exposure. And so think about this in your businesses. How can I reduce the amount of exposure to bad things I have in my business, but how can I open myself up to more opportunities? So increasing my surface area. And I'm going to pause here 1 second. Michael, I've got to plug in real quick. Give me 5 seconds, okay? All right, we're back.
I can easily edit that out, so that's not a problem.
Thanks. All right, so the third and final category of mental models I wanted to cover with you in this training has to do with systems. And the three types of mental models for systems I'll cover is feedback loops, bottlenecks, and algorithms. So what is a feedback loop? Basically, an action is taken or a move is made, and then there's an effect. But then the effect is, does the effect drive the action to the next step? So there's two types of feedback loops we're looking at, positive and negative. Now, positive feedback story that I can share with you is somebody that I met in college and had a pretty incredible turnaround story. So meet John Doe. I'm not going to give the real name, obviously, but John is a college student. He's 35 pounds overweight, and the poor guy can't even see his feet when he stands up. So he struggles to find employment. He's got social anxiety. He struggles with confidence. He dresses like a homeless person. Needless to say, he's just kind of coasting through life. However, deep down, he gets this sliver of motivation one day to say, I want to make a change, but I'm not sure where to start. And he reaches out to his friends and tells them, I don't want to be overweight. I don't want to be antisocial. I want to make a change. So one of his friends, takes mercy on him and says, hey, why don't you come? We've got this jujitsu class that we do once a week with a couple of friends. Just come on by and see if you like it. So John says, hey, that sounds like a good idea. So John goes into the class and gets pushed and banged around and roughed up for 45 minutes. Now, after the class, he's hurt, he's tired, but something happens inside him. He actually liked the class and liked what it did to him. So he goes back and licks his wounds and comes back the next week for another class and then another class. Within a few weeks, John Doe has lost 10 pounds. And he decides, I'm not going to train with beginners anymore. I want to start doing some weight training and get stronger so I can, battle with some of the more intermediate and expert guys. Well, as he lifts weights and does more jujitsu training, he loses another 10 pounds. Looks in the mirror and says, wow, I can actually see some of my jawline, but you know what? That's not good enough. I'm better than that. So he starts to lift more weight, more jujitsu, changes his diet. Now he's down 30 pounds. The double chin's gone. He has a jawline, which everybody can see. He can see in photos. He's walking more confident. His shoulders are back. And one day a classmate mentions, hey, you're graduating in 6 months. We've got a telemarketing firm that we think you'd be good at. Why don't you come out and get a job with us when you graduate? So he did. He gets the job at telemarketing. He starts off, he's bad at sales, but decides, you know what? I lost the weight, which is one of my biggest challenges. I'm getting more social. I can learn this. So John gets better at telemarketing sales, starts making more money, does more jujitsu, lifts more weights. Pretty soon, hey, you know what would help with clients? Why don't I change my wardrobe? So John gets rid of the grungy type clothes he wears and starts buying suit coats, tailored pants, jeans, shaves more, things like that. Pretty soon there's work parties going on, and now John's getting female attention. Hey, love the way you dressed. Can you tell me more about how you're doing so good at work? Now John loses another 10 pounds and he gets promoted. And pretty soon he's making 40% more than he did when he graduated from college. Now the beauty of this story is all of this happened with one jujitsu class. And that's an example of a positive feedback loop. John took a jujitsu class, got hurt, got banged up, wasn't too good at it, but decided, you know what? I like what this did to me. I like the type of person I am when I did this. So I'm going to go back and do it again. Well, then he decides to lift weights, loses the weight, gets more social, gets a job, gets better at sales, the money comes in, he starts getting more attention. So all of this, as you can see on the screen, each action he takes creates an effect. The effect drives more action, which creates another effect. And if you get it going in the correct direction, that's called a positive feedback loop. So think about as a business owner and as a person or even a parent to kids, what type of feedback loops can you start generating that almost create a chain reaction in your life? What things can you do to light that little spark that makes you want to be better, or whatever result you get makes you want to do more of to get more positive results? Next mental model I want to talk about under systems is bottlenecks. Now, you are only as good as your weakest link. And on the screen, I have a bottle here. Well, if something were to clog the bottle right here at this purple point, it would choke off the flow of liquid coming out of the bottle. And in business, we want to identify and address bottlenecks in our performance and in our business and in our systems. For example, I'm working at a Fortune 500 company years ago, and there's a process that they ran once every week. And the process was we'd get some data from some banks, we'd have to crunch it through some systems, then 5 or 6 people would review it, then they make notes, then it would come back to another system, and then it would go out to the bank with clean data. That process took approximately 15 to 20 man hours every week. Now, as we talked about opportunity cost before, when we're spending 15 to 20 hours on a low impact process that really doesn't generate revenue for the bank, we're giving up revenue making opportunities. So we sat down and we said, this is a bottleneck. How do we fix it? Well, we eventually automated the piece from the bank. We automated the data cleansing system such that this process went from 15 to 20 hours a week down to less than one. So the question is, what was done with the other 14, 15, 16 hours we gained back? Well, the team that used to do that now looked into revenue generating opportunities for the bank. And over the year, they were able to take that extra time and build another $500,000 revenue generator for the bank simply by eliminating the bottleneck in a low impact system, which is more of a cost center. We were able to create a revenue center. And this illustrates the power of the bottleneck for you. Is think about in your business, are there people or systems that are just slowing things down? And can you automate, can you eliminate, or can you delegate these processes or bottlenecks such that you can free up your time to make more money, generate more business, and come up with more ideas? And the best way, by the way, is systematizing processes. So this leads to efficiency and scalability. Next mental model for systems is algorithms, one of my favorites. On the screen, you see a bunch of computer code, which is what I used to stare at all day. But this computer code is responsible for much of what happens every day, both in business and the stock markets. If you go shopping on Amazon, if you're searching on Google, this computer code that doesn't make sense probably to most of you is running a lot of what we use every day in the background. So algorithms is basically a fancy word for recipe. If you think about when you make desserts or cookies with your family or your parents when you were a kid, you think about a cake where, okay, I need 4 eggs, and then I need flour, and then I need some butter, and then I need some cake. I preheat the oven, and you follow the same process every time with a few variabilities. If X happens, then do Y. If A happens, then do B. The idea here is algorithms are everywhere, from the stock market to suggested products, even military applications. So the word, by the way, is formed from the old Arabic word algorithm, which is the system of Arabic numerals. So when you think about counting, we start at 1, 2, then 3. But 3 is basically made up of a 2 and a 1, or 3 ones. Now, how does this affect you? Well, are you systematizing your business? Are you systematizing your day? For example, if you're a business owner and you're spending an hour either on chores at the house or things that don't really generate revenue, and you don't like, assuming you don't like, say, cutting the grass or things like that, can you come up with a system? Now, I'm not talking about a system for grass cutting, but I'm talking about a system for something comes into your world, right? And you own a business, and it has nothing to do with the business. Can I have an algorithm to handle that? Meaning, here's an example: a new chore comes into my house, right? We decide that we'd like to start cleaning the house a little bit more because it makes the family happy and it's just a better environment. But the question I ask myself as a business owner is, do I want to spend an hour every day cleaning my house? The answer is no, or an hour every few days. Well, I wrote an algorithm on a Google Doc that says if a chore comes in, do I enjoy it? No. And does it have to be done? Yes. If those two items are true, it has to be done, yes, but I don't want to do it, then I'm going to delegate it. And I don't care what it is. If I have the money, I'm going to delegate it. So, for instance, for that, we'd hire a maid. Next thing is, I have to cut my grass, right? I have a house. Do I enjoy cutting the grass? I used to, but not anymore. Does it have to be done? Yes, or we get fined by the village if the grass grows too high. Outsource it. Now that I have that simple algorithm, I don't have to waste time on, should I do this? What do I think about this? I just run it through the algorithm. Another one is in business. If we get a lead, right, on my math tutoring site, the algorithm is, did they give us their email? If no, then we're not going to pursue anything because they haven't made a micro step. If they do give us their email, the next check is, have they spent more than 2 minutes on our site? If they have, then that shows me interest and investment. I'll send them an email or maybe a free gift. But if they just gave an email and they haven't spent 2 minutes on the site, what I found is most of the time that email is just a bunk email or invalid, meaning they set up a separate email just to sign up for accounts to get free stuff. So now that makes it easy for me because I can separate out all the pretend leads from the real leads. So for you, it helps if you just sit down on a Google Doc, or if you like pen and paper, and just sketch out these things that come into your business and think about, hey, this situation has happened multiple times. We need an algorithm on paper to just determine what we're going to do the next time it comes in. Once you have an algorithm, you free up brain power. And if you've ever seen interviews with Mark Zuckerberg, they ask him, why do you wear the same shirt every day? And he said, it's one less decision I have to make. So basically the algorithm here is, am I going into Facebook to work? Yes. And if I'm not giving a presentation to investors, correct, then I wear my blue shirt. And it's simple. And then that's one less decision that's eliminated every day. So that's the 9 mental models that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. But being a friend and a fan of Michael and what he's doing with these series, I decided to give you one more, a bonus mental model. And out of all the mental models that I've come across, which are hundreds in my life, and the ones I use, the one I'm about to present for you has made more of a difference than any other mental model I can think about. And even compounding, which I love, feedback loops, which I've exploited to my advantage so many times, this one I'm about to show you is an 80/20 of mental models. So if you take nothing else away from this presentation, this one I would take some notes and write down. So on the screen, if you don't recognize, this is Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's partner. He passed away recently at, I believe, 99 years old. He is a huge proponent of mental models. In fact, he is the secret driving force behind Warren Buffett's success because he is a big practitioner and proponent of mental models. And one of his favorite is something called inversion. Now, if you pick up Charlie's book, there's a big blue book called, what is it? Poor Charlie's Almanac. I'm looking at my bookshelf real quick. Fantastic book. If you have a chance, go buy that. They interviewed Charlie one time and he was joking. He said, all I want to know is where I'm going to die so I can not go there. And while this is hilarious, it actually reveals part of his and Warren Buffett's investing secret. And when he was interviewed one time, Charlie, this was years back, and one of the reporters asked him, how is it you guys have been so successful and very, very few people can repeat what you're doing and your investing model so simple, but why is nobody replicating this? Some people have enough money to get there, but they're not doing it. And Charlie smiled and he said, it's remarkable how much long-term advantage people like us, meaning Warren and Charlie and Berkshire Hathaway, have gotten by trying to be consistently not stupid instead of trying to be very intelligent. So what does that mean? When they interviewed Michelangelo years ago when he did the statue of David, I believe, and they asked him, how did you do this? And his answer was fascinating. He said, I took a stone, I searched all over for the right stone, and when I found it, I looked at the stone and I saw David inside it, and I just chipped away what wasn't David. And this is a visual for you on inversion. So inversion essentially is, instead of thinking about what I could do right in business, family man, husband, a wife, networking, all of that stuff, instead of trying to figure out how to do it or get better, instead, I'm going to figure out what would hurt my progress and just not do that. Now, why is that powerful? Because inversion realizes that a lot of our goals, whether they're wealth, networking, weight loss, some, if not most of that stuff, results are out of our control. They're out of our control. Some stuff is in our control, but some is out of our control. Inversion focuses on what we can control. For instance, suppose I go out and I want to get better at networking, right? I'm naturally an introvert. I haven't drank in years. I was more social when I did drink, but I don't drink anymore. So I was naturally at a disadvantage. But how can I be more sociable? Well, I could read books and find out tips from the great socializers, and that's a good strategy. Or I could say and realize in my life, what are situations where people were talking to me and I was just turned off? Well, if I used inversion, I'd say this. I asked myself, how would I screw up the next networking event I go to? Well, I'd have bad breath. I wouldn't brush my teeth. I wouldn't shower. I wouldn't shave. I dressed like I'm homeless. I wouldn't make eye contact when I talk to people. And I would not figure out the nodes of the network. So what is a node? A node is somebody that has 5, 6, 7 people around them at all times. What does that tell me? Well, that tells me that people like them, they want to know them, and then they know people that can introduce you to other people. So inversion tells me I would avoid all the node people, right? The high connected people. I would go in the corner and eat and not be social. I drink too much and make a fool of myself. Well, if we look at inversion, how do I fix that? I brush my teeth, right? Simple thing. I'm going to shower and shave before I go out. These sound like such elementary, childish things, but if you go through this list, you'll start to reveal things to yourself that you didn't think about. I'd probably shine my shoes. I don't have to be the best dressed, but dress presentable. And then I would spend at least 15 minutes talking to the node people, right? I'd find the 2 or 3 people at the party that everybody seems to know or hanging around, and I would go talk to them. So by looking at inversion and looking at it from how would I screw this up and just not do that, we focus on things we can control. I can't control people's reaction to me all the time, but what I can control is things I would do to turn them off, right? If I'm at the networking event, my bad breath, too much drinking, dressed like a slob. So if I eliminate the wrongs, the Michelangelo effect takes place where if I cut out all the wrongs, the right way sort of just emerges, right? It reveals itself. And there's a great book talk about tennis. And let me go to the next slide. It's by Simon Ramo. It's called Extraordinary Tennis for the Ordinary Player. And this is a fascinating book that reveals the power of inversion. So in expert tennis, the book found that about 80% of the points are won. In amateur tennis, about 80% of the points are lost. In other words, professional tennis is a winner's game. But what they found was winners eliminate taking bad shots. They make the amateurs take bad shots to give up points. They're making the other person give up the points for them. They don't even have to do the work. So for instance, if I'm a pro tennis player and I'm facing an amateur, they found that like if I shoot the ball on the corner and make that person run a lot to get to it, there's a high probability they're going to hit it off the corner of their racket or hit it into the net. So I don't even have to be that good when I'm facing the amateur. I just have to find a way for the other person to screw it up and present that situation. So there's a difference between the winner's game and the loser's game is we're eliminating the possibility of us screwing up the win such that we've controlled all the outcomes that we can control. We still might lose the tennis game, but the key here is I'm not taking myself out of the tennis game. I'm going to make that opponent beat me because they're better, not because I took myself out. So in conclusion, those are 10 mental models that are powerful tools for business owners. And I hope you got some value out of this because it's given me a ton of value in my life, and I love to share it with you. Mental models help you make better decisions, optimize resources, and basically achieve greater success. So I hope after this training that you take at least one of these, incorporate them in your life and in your business, and see results that you would have never imagined before. So thank you for coming to this presentation.
Don, that was excellent. I took away quite a bit. I've got an entire page full of notes, but I do have a couple of questions, so I'm glad you presented that. Uh, how can understanding the opportunity cost, how would that improve strategic decision making in your business, moving forward? Say you've screwed up some things and now you're looking at things differently. What does that
Your question is, how does opportunity cost factor into failure?
correct?
Well, how do I? Probably the best answer I can think of is Silicon Valley. So they have this model called MVP, which is minimum viable product, and their
Hold
and
on,
their big
hold on,
thing is
hold on, Don. Can we do something with the screen? Maybe I can just do it. That was
how's that?
weird. Yeah, that's perfect. So
All
let's
right.
go because it had me freezing.
Yeah, the best answer I can think of is Silicon Valley uses this thing called MVP, which is minimum viable product. And what they do is they create a new product that they think that the market will like. They'll do some interviews, they'll launch it, but they won't spend a lot of money or resources on it, and they'll launch it out in the market. And they say, can we get 10, 15, 20 people to actually take an interest in this? And if so, the next step is now would they buy it? Or ask them, what would it take for this product to upgrade for you to buy it? And then they'll get feedback. But if they do that same process and they don't get a lot of interest, they just kill it, they destroy it. And the opportunity cost is they've only spent 10, 15, 20 hours on developing a new product or an idea, launch it to the market maybe for another week. If it fails, you haven't thrown millions of dollars of capital and resources at it. And so the answer to your question in two words is fail fast, right? Try something, fail. But when you fail fast, I keep a failure journal. And I don't know if this will be of value to the viewers today, but I have a journal of decisions I made where my thought was, I'm making this decision because of X. And then when it comes back as a complete stinker or a failure, and I learned why, I write down, hey, here's where the holes were in my thinking. Well, why is that valuable? Because as I have more failures, I realize, wow, you know what? I screw this up a lot because I assume that this person is going to act like this. And when I start taking that away, which is inversion, another mental model, then I start to see better results. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. And, it also plays into there really are no failures, only lessons. So
Right.
That's excellent. I love that answer. One more thing, you talked about compounding leverage. What what is that? How does that play into long-term business growth? I mean, we're looking at we start a business today. We learn some things. Is it an educational compounding? Is it what does that look like in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, long-term thinking, was it I forgot which investor, may have been Warren Buffett or one of the people that are far up there. They said we are long-term greedy. And what that means is we're doing things today we may not see value in for years. For instance, MathCelebrity. When I started it, the first year we maybe got 2 people a day to come to the site. Just sputtering in, it was embarrassing. Then year 3, I was celebrating because we had maybe 40 or 50 people a day, right? Not a lot. But if you keep at this, and to answer your question, compound interest, opportunity cost, and leverages, in year 6, something wild happened. We jumped from 50,000 people a year to almost a million a year. And then the next year was 3 million, then 6 million, then 8 million. So if you can stay at this, just like we talked about Warren Buffett at age 65, if you can eliminate or reduce stupid behaviors and decisions, and you get smarter as you get older, or at least that's the goal. The same thing should apply to businesses. Can you keep compounding those assets but reduce or eliminate the liabilities? And again, this happens with wealth, right? If we want to talk about the multiply by zero, suppose Warren Buffett bet everything on a stock and he lost. Everything he's built for the last 70, 80 years is gone, right? So again, it goes back to amplify your assets, but continuously watch like a hawk things that are dragging you down or bringing you down, and eliminate or reduce those factors.
Excellent answer. That's exactly the direction I was hoping you were going to go with that answer. So that's amazing that we're thinking alike here. Um, the presentation's been nothing short of amazing. I'm sure the listeners took away immense value. I know that I did. I do have one last question. We ask all our guests the same question. And what is Don Sevcik's definition of success?
Ooh, that's a good one. I probably have to say, am I a little better today than I was yesterday? So I look at the world in 3 terms: health, wealth, relationships, right? I got my 3 here. Health and wealth may one day maybe stay the same. Hopefully it doesn't get worse, but did I get a little better today on one of them, relationships? Or have I made a move in my life that has improved something of those 3? So those break down, by the way, right? Health can be physical, mental, spiritual. Wealth can be assets, knowledge, networks, things like that. So I always try to get a little better in one way personally than I was the day before. And I think the best quote that speaks to that is Jim Rohn, is the late great Jim Rohn. He said, work on yourself harder than you do at your job. And so your job, you can substitute job with your business. But if I work on myself, which I can control, I tend to notice that things around me get better. So I assume that if things are wrong in my life, the old extreme ownership mantra, which I recently adopted, it's very tough, but it's humbling. If I'm having a problem, say my wife and I aren't getting along or the kids aren't getting along, I used to be like, I wish they would just do this. Now it's what am I doing or what am I thinking that's causing that problem? And so if I can get better in one of those 3 categories, health, wealth, relationships, I think that's a successful day and a successful person.
That's very true. You affect your environment more than any external factor out there. So that's very interesting definitions of success. I appreciate
I am my own worst enemy when that happens.
that. I think we all are on occasion, right?
Yeah, there's
So
that old Scooby Doo meme. I don't know if you've seen it, where there's a mask over the bad guy, and it's like, let's gonna see who's been ruining my life, and he picks up the mask, and it's himself.
yeah, of course. We have to take that personal responsibility in life because at the end of the day, it is our responsibility. We have to accept our actions, our decision making, right, wrong, or any different. It's us.
Yes, sir.
Well, Don, thank you for coming on the show and amazing, amazing presentation. I took away a ton of value. I'm sure all of our listeners did as well. And so, if our listeners have any questions or just want to follow up with you, how do they do that?
If you're on social media, I'm active on LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube, but probably LinkedIn's the best. So if you go to linkedin.com/IN/DONSEBCIK, which we could probably add in the notes. And then other than that, just come to mathcelebrity.com, MATH celebrity, and you can use the contact button there and it goes straight to me.
Excellent. Well, again, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much for your time and hope you have a very successful afternoon.
Thanks, Michael. I had a blast. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Don. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, good stuff, man.
Yeah, let me know if there's any room for improvement. I always want to get a little better. So, other than the plug not being plugged in for the Zoom draining the battery, I'll work on that.
Yeah, that's no worries. Aren't sure you want to stop recording. Yes,